She returned to take care of her sick grandfather and ended up finding love with the family heir. The phone call came at 3 a.m., shattering the quiet of Alexandra Cooper's Manhattan apartment. Her heart stopped when she saw her mother's number lighting up the screen. No good news ever came at this hour. Grandpa Richard had a stroke. Her mother's voice cracked. He's stable, but... The pause stretched like a rubber band about to snap. The doctors say he can't live alone anymore. Alex sat up in bed, her silk pajamas clinging to suddenly cold skin. The words hit her like a physical blow. Her grandfather, the man who taught her to fish in Lake Champlain, who'd sneaked her extra cookies when her parents weren't looking, who'd never missed a single dance recital, was mortal after all. "I'll come home," she said without hesitation, her mind already racing through the implications. 6 years of building her career at Goldman Sachs, her upcoming promotion to vice president, the apartment she'd finally gotten in the perfect neighborhood. All of it suddenly felt hollow compared to what really mattered. Her mother's relief was palpable. "Are you sure, honey? Burlington's a long way from your life in New York. He was there for me through everything, Mom. Now it's my turn." Within 48 hours, Alex had negotiated a remote work arrangement, packed 2 suitcases, and boarded a flight to Burlington, Vermont. As the plane descended over Lake Champlain, the familiar green mountains embraced her like old friends. But this wasn't the homecoming she'd imagined. The hospital corridor seemed endless as Alex followed a nurse to her grandfather's room. The antiseptic smell brought back memories of when her grandmother passed away 5 years ago. She steeled herself before entering, but nothing could have prepared her for the sight of her larger-than-life grandfather looking so small in the hospital bed. "There's my favorite granddaughter." Richard Cooper's voice was weaker than she remembered, but his blue eyes still sparkled with the same mischief she'd known all her life. "I'm your only granddaughter, Grandpa," Alex replied, fighting back tears as she took his hand. His skin felt paper-thin, but his grip was still strong. "All the more reason you're my favorite." He tried to wink, but the right side of his face didn't quite cooperate. "They tell me I need a babysitter now. Think of me more as your personal assistant." Alex sat on the edge of his bed. "Someone needs to keep you out of trouble." A knock on the door interrupted their reunion. "Mr. Cooper, time for your physical therapy evaluation." The man who entered wasn't wearing standard hospital scrubs. Instead, he was dressed in tailored slacks and a crisp blue button-down that highlighted broad shoulders. His dark hair had a slight wave to it, and his jawline could have been carved from marble. But it was his eyes that caught Alex's attention, warm brown with flecks of gold, radiating both intelligence and compassion. "Dr. Maxwell Crawford," he introduced himself, extending his hand. "I'll be overseeing your grandfather's rehabilitation program." Alex stood to shake his hand, acutely aware of her wrinkled travel clothes and messy ponytail. "Alexandra Cooper. I'm Richard's granddaughter." "Ah, the famous Alex." Dr. Crawford's smile reached his eyes. "Your grandfather hasn't stopped talking about you since he woke up." "All lies, I'm sure." Alex shot her grandfather a look, but he just grinned innocently. "On the contrary, he said you were brilliant, determined, and wouldn't take no for an answer." "I can already see he was right about at least 2 of those things." Dr. Crawford's gaze held hers for a moment longer than necessary. "Max here isn't just any doctor," Richard chimed in. "He's practically royalty in Burlington. His grandfather founded Crawford Medical Center." Alex watched as Dr. Crawford's shoulders tensed slightly. There was a story there, she could tell. "Please, call me Max," he said, his tone carefully neutral. "And right now, I'm just a physical therapist trying to get your grandfather back on his feet." "Don't let him fool you," Richard continued. "He could be running this whole hospital, but instead he insists on working directly with patients. Says it's more rewarding." "All right, Mr. Cooper, enough about me," Max redirected smoothly. "Let's see how those legs of yours are working today." Alex moved to leave, but her grandfather caught her hand. "Stay, sweetheart. I might need a cheerleader." For the next hour, Alex watched as Max worked with her grandfather. His hands were strong but gentle, his instructions clear and encouraging. He had a way of pushing Richard just enough while still making him laugh. Even when the exercises were clearly challenging, she couldn't help but notice how Max's forearms flexed as he supported her grandfather's weight. His voice dropped to a soft, reassuring tone when Richard struggled. There was something about him that seemed at odds with the image of a privileged heir to a medical empire. As the session ended, Max helped Richard back into bed. "You did great today, Mr. Cooper. Miss Cooper, could I have a word with you about your grandfather's home care plan?" In the hallway, Max pulled out a tablet and began outlining Richard's rehabilitation schedule. Alex found herself studying his profile as he spoke, the way his brow furrowed in concentration, the subtle New England lilt in his accent. "I know it seems overwhelming," he said, misreading her expression, "but we'll take it one day at a time." "I'm not overwhelmed," Alex straightened her spine, channeling her Wall Street confidence. "I'm ready to do whatever it takes to help him recover." Max's expression softened. "You know, most people wouldn't put their lives on hold like this. Most people don't have a grandfather like mine." Their eyes met, and for a moment, neither spoke. Then Max cleared his throat and handed her a business card. "My personal number's on the back. Call me if you need anything, day or night." As Alex watched him walk away, she couldn't shake the feeling that coming home to Burlington was going to change her life in ways she never expected. Getting Richard settled into his Victorian home on South Willard Street proved more challenging than Alex had anticipated. The three-story house, with its wraparound porch and gabled windows, had always seemed magical during her childhood visits. Now, every steep staircase and narrow doorway felt like an obstacle course. "I can manage just fine," Richard insisted as Alex helped him from the wheelchair to his favorite leather armchair. The morning sun streamed through the bay window, highlighting the silver in his hair and the stubborn set of his jaw, a family trait she'd inherited. "The doctor said you need supervision for at least 6 weeks," Alex reminded him, adjusting pillows behind his back. "And Max specifically mentioned—" "Oh, it's Max now, is it?" Richard's eyes twinkled. "Not Dr. Crawford?" Alex felt heat rise to her cheeks. "That's what he asked us to call him, as you well know." She busied herself organizing his medications on the antique side table. "Besides, shouldn't you be more focused on your exercises than on my choice of words? Sweetheart, I've been stuck in that hospital for a week. Let your old grandpa have a little fun." He reached for her hand. "Though I am sorry you had to leave your life in New York." "Hey, this isn't forever." Alex squeezed his hand. "Once you're back on your feet, I'll figure out my next move." She didn't mention that her boss had already started making noises about her position being better filled by someone more committed to being in the office. The doorbell chimed, its deep brass notes echoing through the house. Alex smoothed her yoga pants and wished she put on something more presentable than an oversized Harvard Business School sweatshirt. Max stood on the porch, looking unfairly put together in dark jeans and a charcoal sweater that emphasized his broad shoulders. He carried a leather medical bag that wouldn't have looked out of place in an old movie. "House call?" Alex asked, stepping back to let him in. "I like to check how my patients are settling in at home," Max replied, following her to the living room. "Though I have to admit, this house is something special. Been in the family for 4 generations, Richard announced proudly. Alexandra's grandmother restored it herself. Had quite an eye for design. My Catherine did." Max studied the intricate woodwork and period details with genuine appreciation. "The craftsmanship is incredible. You don't see this kind of attention to detail anymore. You should see the disaster zone upstairs," Alex said. "I've been trying to figure out how to modify the bathroom for Grandpa's needs." "Mind if I take a look?" Max asked. "I've helped a few families with similar renovations." As they climbed the stairs, Alex became acutely aware of Max's presence behind her. His cologne, something subtle and woodsy, made her think of autumn hikes in the Green Mountains. The upstairs bathroom was a testament to Victorian elegance, with a clawfoot tub and hexagonal floor tiles. Max moved through the space with professional focus, taking measurements and making notes on his phone. "The tub will be tricky," he mused, "but I know a contractor who specializes in accessible renovations. He did great work for my mother after her hip replacement." "Your mother?" Alex hadn't expected such a personal reference. Max's expression flickered. "Yeah, she lives alone in the family estate. My father passed away 3 years ago." "I'm sorry," Alex said softly. Was that when you decided to focus on rehabilitation instead of hospital administration? The question slipped out before she could stop herself. Max turned to face her, surprise evident in his features. They were standing closer than she'd realized in the confined space. "You're very observant," he said finally. "Most people just assume I'm going through a rebellious phase before taking my rightful place at Crawford Medical." "I know something about family expectations," Alex admitted. "My father still hasn't forgiven me for choosing finance over law school." Their eyes met in the antique mirror above the sink, and Alex felt something shift in the air between them. Max opened his mouth to say something, but Richard's voice carried up from downstairs. "If you two are done redesigning my bathroom, I could use some help with these exercise instructions." The moment broken, they headed back downstairs. Alex watched as Max worked with her grandfather, demonstrating movements and correcting his form with gentle efficiency. There was something compelling about seeing him in his element, fully focused on helping others despite his privileged background. "I'm leaving some new exercises for Alex to help you with," Max told Richard. "Nothing too strenuous, but consistency is key." "Don't worry, she's got her grandmother's determination," Richard said. "Catherine would have loved you, by the way. She had no patience for people who didn't use their talents to help others." Alex saw Max's composed expression waver slightly at the compliment. Before she could process what that meant, her phone buzzed with a New York number she recognized as her boss's assistant. "I should take this," she excused herself, stepping onto the porch. The spring air had turned chilly, but the conversation with her boss left her feeling colder. Words like restructuring in on-site requirements made it clear that her remote arrangement had an expiration date. When she returned inside, Max was packing up his bag. "Everything okay?" he asked, noting her expression. "Just work stuff," Alex forced a smile. "Wall Street waits for no one." "Listen," Max hesitated by the door. "I know moving back here must be an adjustment. If you need someone to show you around the new Burlington, or just grab coffee and vent, I'm around." "Are you asking is Richard's doctor, or?" Alex let the question hang. "As someone who knows what it's like to have your life plans unexpectedly change," Max answered carefully. "And maybe as someone who'd like to get to know you better outside of a medical context." Before Alex could respond, Max's phone chirped with an emergency alert. "I have to run," he said, already moving toward his car. "Think about that coffee." Alex watched him drive away, her mind spinning. She'd come to Burlington to take care of her grandfather, not to question her career path or develop feelings for a doctor who clearly had his own complicated relationship with family obligations. Back inside, Richard was dozing in his chair, looking peaceful despite the challenges ahead. On the side table, Max had left detailed notes in precise handwriting, along with a business card for the contractor he'd mentioned. In the corner, he'd written something personal. "The right path isn't always the expected one." Alex touched the words lightly, wondering if he'd meant them for her grandfather's recovery journey, or something else entirely. The Church Street marketplace buzzed with early summer energy as Alex navigated through the Thursday evening crowd. After 2 weeks of dividing her time between remote work and caring for Richard, she'd finally accepted Max's coffee invitation. Except somehow, coffee had turned into dinner. Locals and tourists mingled on the brick-paved pedestrian mall. The air filled with music from street performers and the scent of blooming lilacs. Alex checked her phone again. She was early, but Max's text had been specific about meeting at Lunig's Bistro. The French restaurant's vintage facade transported her to another time, its Art Nouveau sign swaying gently in the breeze. "I hope you haven't been waiting long," Max's voice came from behind her. He'd swapped his usual professional attire for dark jeans and a navy button-down that made his eyes appear deeper brown in the early evening light. "Just got here," Alex replied, trying to ignore how her pulse quickened. "Though I'm surprised you suggested French cuisine. Most people go for craft beer and burgers around here." "This place is special." Max guided her inside with a light touch at the small of her back. "My father used to bring patients' families here when they needed good news delivered in a gentle setting." The hostess led them to a quiet corner table beneath a vintage poster advertising French wines. "Dr. Crawford," she greeted warmly. "We've missed seeing you here." "Thanks, Marie. How's your son doing in his physical therapy program? Graduating next month?" Your recommendation letter made all the difference. As they settled in, Alex studied Max over her menu. You seem to know everyone in town. Hazard of being a Crawford in Burlington, he shrugged, but there was tension in his shoulders. Though lately, I'm better known for disappointing the family legacy than upholding it. What do you mean? Max was quiet as the waiter poured their wine. The board of directors, my uncle included, expected me to step into my father's role as chief of medicine after he passed. Instead, I chose to work directly with patients in rehabilitation. They saw it as beneath my potential. But you love what you do, Alex observed. Anyone can see that when you're working with patients. Like your grandfather? Max's smile returned. He's making remarkable progress, by the way. His determination reminds me of someone else I know. If you're implying I'm stubborn, determined, Max corrected, raising his glass. To stubborn people who know what they want? The conversation flowed easily as they shared plates of coq au vin and duck confit. Alex found herself telling him about her childhood dreams of becoming a ballet dancer, her father's insistence on a practical career, and how finance had unexpectedly become her passion. Until now, she admitted, pushing around the last bite of potato dauphinoise. These past 2 weeks, watching you work with patients, seeing the direct impact, it's made me question things. Wall Street isn't fulfilling anymore? It's not that simple. I built a life there. My team, my clients. She took a sip of wine. But something shifted since I came home. Or maybe it was shifting before, and I just didn't want to see it. Sometimes it takes stepping away to gain perspective, Max said softly. After my father died, I spent months trying to be the son he wanted, attending board meetings, shadowing administrators. Then one day, I filled in for a PT who was on maternity leave, working directly with patients, seeing them rebuild their lives. I couldn't go back to boardrooms after that. Their eyes met across the table, and Alex felt the weight of shared understanding. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed with her grandfather's ringtone. "Grandpa, is everything okay?" She answered quickly, heart racing. "Everything's fine, sweetheart. Just wanted to remind you about my medication, the blue pill with dinner." The companion service nurse wasn't sure. Alex closed her eyes, guilt washing over her. "I'm so sorry. I forgot to update the schedule. It's the white pill with dinner now, blue one at bedtime. We changed it yesterday, remember?" "Ah, right. Don't worry about your old grandpa. Enjoy your date with Max." "It's not But Richard had already hung up, probably grinning. "Everything all right?" Max asked as she put her phone away. "Yes, just medication timing. I should have been clearer with the nursing service." She rubbed her temples. "Sometimes it feels like I'm dropping all the balls I'm trying to juggle." "Hey," Max reached across the table, his hand covering hers. "You're doing an amazing job. Most people wouldn't manage half of what you're handling." The warmth of his touch sent tingles up her arm. "I just want to get it right, you know? For him, for work, for..." She trailed off, lost in the intensity of his gaze. "Alexandra," he said her full name like a caress. "You don't have to be perfect at everything." The moment stretched between them, heavy with possibility. Then Max's emergency pager shattered the silence. He checked it with a grimace. "Multi-car accident on I-89. They need all hands at the hospital." He was already signaling for the check. "I'm sorry to cut this short." "No, I understand. Go, people need you." Max hesitated at the table. "Have breakfast with me? Saturday morning? I know a place with the best maple syrup in Vermont." "Is this another family legacy spot?" Alex teased. "Actually, it's a small farm outside of town. Very un-Crawford-like." His smile was hopeful. "What do you say? Text me the details?" Max squeezed her hand once more before hurrying out. Through the window, Alex watched him jog down Church Street, already pulling out his phone to coordinate with the hospital. She gathered her things slowly, processing the evening, the way he looked at her, the electricity in his touch, the easy conversation that felt like they'd known each other for years instead of weeks. It was dangerous territory. She was here temporarily, focused on her grandfather's recovery. Getting involved with someone, especially someone as complicated as Max Crawford, wasn't part of the plan. But as she walked home through the cooling evening air, past couples strolling hand in hand and families enjoying late ice cream. Alex couldn't help wondering if sometimes the best things in life happened when plans changed. Her phone buzzed with a text from Max. Saturday, 9 a.m. Wear comfortable shoes. And thank you for tonight. Alex smiled, typing back, "Go save lives, Dr. Crawford." His response came quickly, "It's still Max to you." At home, she found Richard reading in his study, looking innocent. "Have a nice evening, sweetheart? You're worse than a teenager with this matchmaking, you know that? I'm just saying Catherine and I met because of a medical situation too." He winked. "Sometimes the worst moments bring us the best surprises." Alex kissed his forehead, inhaling the familiar scent of his aftershave. "Take your blue pill before bed, troublemaker." In her childhood bedroom, now temporarily her office, Alex opened her laptop to finish some work. But instead of focusing on spreadsheets, she found herself researching physical therapy programs in rehabilitation center management. Just out of curiosity, she told herself, just to understand Max's world better. But deep down, she knew she was really trying to understand her own changing heart. The Saturday morning sun painted the Champlain Valley in golden hues as Max's Range Rover wound through back roads outside Burlington. Alex watched the landscape transition from suburban developments to rolling farmland, trying not to notice how Max's forearm muscles flexed as he handled the gear shift. "You're being very mysterious about this breakfast place," she said, breaking their comfortable silence. "Promise you won't laugh?" Max glanced at her, a hint of vulnerability in his expression. "The farm belongs to my mother's former housekeeper, Mrs. Sullivan. After my father died, she was the only one who supported my decision to focus on rehabilitation. She left the estate to start this maple farm with her son, and," he hesitated, "I helped with the initial investment." Before Alex could respond, they turned onto a gravel drive leading to a charming farmhouse. A hand-painted sign read, "Sullivan's Sweet Maple House and Cafe. Dr. Max." A woman in her 60s hurried down the porch steps, her silver hair escaping a messy bun. "And this must be the famous Alexandra I've heard about." "Mrs. Sullivan," Max's face lit up as she hugged him. "This is Alex Cooper. Alex, meet the woman who kept me fed through medical school and gave me the courage to disappoint my entire family." "Oh hush," Mrs. Sullivan waved him off. "I just reminded you that your father would have wanted you to be happy, not just successful." She turned to Alex. "Come in, dear. I've got fresh sourdough pancakes and eggs from our hens." The cafe occupied the farmhouse's former living room, with mismatched vintage furniture and local art on the walls. Through wide windows, Alex could see the sugar maple grove stretching toward the mountains. "This is incredible," she said as they settled into a cozy corner table. "How have I never heard of this place?" "We're not in the tourist guides," Mrs. Sullivan winked, pouring coffee. "Just word of mouth from people who appreciate real Vermont maple syrup and good company." As she bustled away, Max watched her with obvious affection. "She was more of a mother to me than my own, especially after Dad died." "Mom," she took his death hard, retreated into herself. The family legacy became her only focus. "Is that why you helped Mrs. Sullivan start this place? To create something outside that legacy?" Max looked surprised by her insight. "Partly, but mainly because she deserves it. 20 years of managing the Crawford estate, dealing with my mother's moods, practically raising me. And all she wanted was to make people happy with good food and maple syrup." Their breakfast arrived. Golden pancakes, eggs with fresh herbs, thick-cut bacon, in the darkest, richest maple syrup Alex had ever tasted. As they ate, Max shared stories about helping tap trees during spring break from medical school, and how Mrs. Sullivan had caught him sneaking cookies from the estate kitchen as a teenager. "Your turn," he said, pushing his plate aside. "Tell me something about Alexandra Cooper that isn't in your Goldman Sachs bio." Alex found herself telling him about the summer she spent teaching dance to kids at the local YMCA, how it felt to help them find confidence through movement. "Sometimes I miss that direct connection. You know, in finance, success is measured in numbers, not smiles." "Is that why you've been researching physical therapy programs?" She nearly choked on her coffee. "How did you—" "Small town," Max smiled. One of my colleagues at the hospital mentioned you'd called asking about requirements for the PT certification program. He crept up Alex's neck. I was just curious. It's not like I'm actually considering, Alex. Max's hand found hers across the table. It's okay to explore options. Life has a way of leading us where we're meant to be, even if it's not where we planned. The intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. Before she could respond, both their phones chimed simultaneously. Richard, minor emergency at house. Nothing serious, but could use you both. They found Richard in the kitchen, surrounded by what looked like every pot and pan in the house. The counters were dusted with flour, and something that might have been cookie dough clung to his wheelchair. I wanted to surprise you with Catherine's snickerdoodles, he explained sheepishly. But it turns out baking from a wheelchair is trickier than I expected. Alex surveyed the chaos, torn between laughter and tears. Her grandmother's snickerdoodles had been a family tradition, something she and Richard had always made together during her visits. Well, Max rolled up his sleeves. I may not know Catherine's recipe, but I did learn a thing or two about baking from Mrs. Sullivan. For the next hour, they worked together cleaning and rebaking. Max showed Richard how to position his wheelchair to reach the counter safely, while Alex measured ingredients. Soon, the kitchen filled with the familiar scent of cinnamon and butter. These aren't half bad, Richard declared as they sampled the results. Though Catherine would say they need more cinnamon, everything needed more cinnamon, according to Grandma. Alex laughed, then caught Max watching her with an expression that made her heart skip. I should check your range of motion while I'm here, he said to Richard, but his eyes lingered on Alex. Those mixing movements were good exercise, but let's make sure you didn't overdo it. As Max worked with Richard, Alex's phone lit up with an email from her boss in New York. The quarterly board meeting was being moved up, and her presence was non-negotiable. She had less than 2 weeks to figure out how to be in 2 places at once. Everything okay? Max asked as he packed up his medical bag. Just work, she forced a smile. Thanks for breakfast and for helping with the cookie situation. Anytime. He hesitated at the door. Alex, about what we were discussing at the phone. It was just curiosity. She cut him off quickly. I'm going back to New York eventually. This is temporary. Something flickered in Max's eyes. Disappointment? Understanding? Right. Of course. He squared his shoulders. I'll see you both at Richard's appointment on Tuesday. After he left, Richard wheeled himself to where Alex stood staring at her phone. You know, sweetheart, sometimes the best things in life aren't temporary. Grandpa, I see the way you look at him, and the way he looks at you when you're not watching. Richard squeezed her hand. Just remember, Catherine and I got married 3 months after we met. When it's right, you know. Alex watched through the window as Max's car disappeared down the street. She thought about the way he'd supported Richard's baking adventure without a moment's hesitation, how natural it felt working beside him in the kitchen, the warmth in his eyes when he looked at her. Her phone buzzed again, another urgent email from New York. 2 worlds pulling her in opposite directions, and she was starting to forget which one felt like home. The Crawford Medical Center's rehabilitation wing hummed with quiet activity as Alex waited outside the physical therapy room. Through the glass, she watched Max working with her grandfather, their laughter carrying faintly through the door. In the 10 days since their breakfast at Sullivan's, she'd been careful to schedule Richard's appointments when she had work calls, avoiding any chance of being alone with Max. Her laptop balanced precariously on her knees as she tried to focus on quarterly projections, but her attention kept drifting to the way Max's hands steadied Richard through each exercise, professional yet caring. The board meeting in New York loomed just 4 days away, and she still hadn't found a solution for Richard's care during her absence. Miss Cooper? A crisp voice interrupted her thoughts. Alex looked up to find an elegant woman in her 60s, wearing a tailored suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent in Manhattan. Something in her features, the same strong jawline, those distinctive brown eyes, made Alex's heart skip. I'm Regina Crawford. The woman's smile didn't reach her eyes. Might I have a word? Alex followed Max's mother to a private consultation room, her mind racing. Through the window, she could see Lake Champlain glittering in the distance. I understand you've been spending time with my son, Regina began, settling into a leather chair with practiced grace. Dr. Crawford and I have a professional relationship through my grandfather's rehabilitation. Alex kept her voice neutral, though her pulse quickened. Please, Regina waved a manicured hand. Let's not pretend. I've seen how Maxwell looks at you. It's the same way he looked before making the unfortunate decision to abandon his responsibilities to this hospital. Alex straightened in her chair. With all due respect, Mrs. Crawford, your son hasn't abandoned anything. He's doing incredible work with his patients. Physical therapy? Regina's laugh was soft but cutting. The Crawford name has meant something in Burlington's medical community for 3 generations. My husband built this center into one of the most respected institutions in New England. Maxwell was meant to carry on that legacy, not waste his talents on basic rehabilitation work. Helping people recover their independence isn't a waste, Alex countered, thinking of her grandfather's progress, the hope in his eyes with each small victory. You're from the financial world, aren't you? Regina leaned forward. Surely you understand the importance of proper asset allocation. Maxwell's skills could be transforming this entire institution. Instead, keys? She gestured dismissively toward the rehabilitation wing. Making a real difference in people's lives? Alex finished. Creating personal connections that matter? Connections? Regina's eyes narrowed. Like the one he's forming with you? Tell me, Miss Cooper, how long do you plan to stay in Burlington? Your career is in New York, isn't it? Your life is there? The question hit uncomfortably close to Alex's own doubts. Before she could respond, the door opened. Mother? Max's voice was cold in a way Alex had never heard before. I wasn't aware you were back from Palm Beach. Maxwell. Regina stood, smoothing her skirt. I came to discuss the board's concerns about the new cardiac wing, but Miss Cooper and I were just having a fascinating conversation about career priorities. The tension in the room was palpable as mother and son stared at each other. Alex could see years of unspoken hurt in Max's rigid posture. Alex, he said, not taking his eyes off his mother, your grandfather's asking for you. Of course. Alex gathered her things, but Regina's voice stopped her at the door. Consider what I said, dear, about proper asset allocation. In the hallway, Max caught Alex's arm. Whatever she said, it's fine. Alex cut him off, fighting to keep her voice steady. She just reminded me of some realities I've been avoiding. Alex, please, I need to check on Grandpa. She pulled away, her heart hammering. I'll see you at his next appointment. She found Richard chatting with his favorite nurse, looking tired but pleased with his progress. There's my girl. Max says I'm ready to try the stairs at home. Small steps, he says, but… Richard paused, studying her face. What's wrong, sweetheart? Nothing, Alex forced a smile. Just work stress. The board meeting's coming up and you're worried about leaving me. Richard wheeled closer, patting her hand. I'll be fine for a few days. That nice nurse practitioner from the service can stay over. It's not just the meeting. Alex sank into a chair. My boss made it clear that this remote arrangement can't continue indefinitely. They need me back in New York. Do they? Richard's eyes were knowing. Well, do you need to be back there? Before Alex could answer, her phone buzzed with another urgent message from work. But as she reached for it, a different notification caught her eye. An email confirmation of her call with the physical therapy program admissions office. When your grandmother got sick, Richard said quietly, I had a successful law practice in Boston. Everyone said I was crazy to move it to Burlington, that I was sacrificing my career. But being with Catherine, building a life together, that was success to me. Grandpa, that's different. You were established. You could transfer your practice. I'm still building my career. Are you sure that's the career you want to build? The question hung in the air as Alex's phone buzzed again. Through the window, she saw Max in an intense discussion with his mother. Even from this distance, she could see the passion in his gestures, the same dedication she'd witnessed him show with patience. You should know, Richard added carefully, that Max asked me yesterday about outpatient rehabilitation programs. Said a bright young woman had inspired him to think about expanding access to physical therapy services in underserved communities. Alex's chest tightened. She thought about the satisfaction she'd felt watching her grandfather regain his independence. The excitement in Max's voice when he talked about patient breakthroughs, the way Mrs. Sullivan had supported his choice to follow his heart instead of family expectations. Her phone lit up with her boss's face, the third call in an hour. Alex stared at it, Regina Crawford's words echoing in her mind, proper asset allocation, but maybe the real asset wasn't her financial expertise or Max's medical degree. Maybe it was the ability to recognize when life was offering a different kind of investment opportunity altogether. Ready to head home, Grandpa? She squeezed Richard's shoulder, noticing how much stronger it felt under her hand. We can practice those stairs Max mentioned. As they left the rehabilitation wing, Alex caught a glimpse of Max watching them go, his expression unreadable. In 4 days, she'd be back in New York, facing the board and a decision that suddenly felt much bigger than just her career. The real question was, which future was she more afraid of losing? The New York skyline blazed against the evening sky as Alex stood at her office window, 40 stories above Manhattan. Everything was exactly as she'd left it a month ago. The same view, the same sleek furniture, the same ambitious energy humming through Goldman Sachs halls. Yet somehow, it all felt different. Alexandra, Jerome Watson, her direct supervisor, strode into her office. "The board's impressed with your numbers, despite the unusual circumstances." He settled into the chair across from her desk. "Now, about your return timeline." Actually, Alex smoothed her blazer, channeling the confidence she learned from watching Max with difficult patience. "I wanted to discuss a modified role, perhaps splitting my time between New York and Burlington, focusing on remote client relationships." "Come on, Alexandra." Jerome's patronizing tone set her teeth on edge. "You've had your little family sabbatical. Time to get serious again. The VP position we discussed is still yours, but you need to be here, full-time, starting next week." Alex's phone lit up with a text from Richard. "Managed the whole staircase today. Max says it's a record recovery time for my age group. I'll need time to think about it," she told Jerome, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Think about it?" Jerome laughed. "Alexandra, let me be clear. This isn't a negotiation. Either you're all in, or we'll need to discuss transition planning for your clients." After he left, Alex sank into her chair, her grandmother's words echoing in her mind from an old conversation. "Life's biggest decisions aren't made in boardrooms, sweetheart. They're made in quiet moments when you finally listen to your heart." Her phone buzzed again, the video from the nurse showing Richard walking up the stairs, moving slowly but surely. And behind him, Max, spotting his progress, those capable hands ready to catch him if needed. The same hands that had touched her so gently at Sullivan's farm, that had demonstrated exercises with endless patience, that had brought healing to so many. She thought of Mrs. Sullivan's words about choosing happiness over success, and how maybe they didn't have to be separate choices. The intercom buzzed. "Miss Cooper, the board is ready for your presentation." In the elevator ride to the conference room, Alex made a decision. Her fingers flew over her phone's keyboard. "Need to talk? Meet me at Sullivan's tomorrow morning?" Max's response came quickly. "I'll be there." 7 a.m.? The board meeting passed in a blur of quarterly projections and strategic initiatives. Alex delivered her presentation flawlessly, years of training taking over. But her mind was already in Vermont, mapping out possibilities she'd never allowed herself to consider. Later that night, in her Manhattan apartment that now felt more like a hotel room, Alex opened her laptop. The admission requirements for the physical therapy program glowed on her screen. Next to it, she pulled up a proposal she'd been working on secretly, a plan for an innovative rehabilitation center combining traditional physical therapy with financial counseling for patients navigating medical bills and insurance. Her phone rang. "Richard, how was the board meeting, sweetheart?" "It went well." Alex curled up on her window seat, watching the city lights twinkle. "But Grandpa, I think I'm about to disappoint a lot of people. Or maybe you're about to stop disappointing yourself." His voice was gentle. "You know, the day Max told his family he was choosing rehabilitation over hospital administration, Regina Crawford came to see me. She did. Wanted me to talk sense into him, since he spent so much time with my case. But watching him work, seeing how he lit up helping patients, I told her she should be proud to have a son who chose purpose over prestige." And now he's thinking of expanding rehabilitation services to underserved communities, Alex said softly. With the right partner, someone who understands both the medical and financial sides, Richard let the implication hang. You know, your grandmother always said the biggest risk in life isn't making the wrong choice, it's not making any choice at all. After they hung up, Alex walked to her closet. The designer suits and power dresses that had once felt like armor now seemed like costumes. At the back, she found what she was looking for, her grandmother's old silk scarf, the one with tiny dancers printed along the edges. Catherine Cooper had worn it to every one of Alex's dance recitals, saying it brought good luck to brave hearts following their dreams. Alex wrapped it around her shoulders, breathing in the faint trace of her grandmother's perfume that still lingered. Her phone lit up with another message from Max. Whatever you need to talk about tomorrow, just know that some legacies are meant to be redefined. Alex touched the words on her screen, thinking of Regina Crawford's disapproval, Jerome's ultimatum, and the countless voices telling her to follow the expected path. But then she thought of Richard climbing those stairs, of Mrs. Sullivan's leap of faith with her maple farm, of Max choosing purpose over pressure. She opened her laptop again, this time to book a morning flight to Burlington. In her drafts folder, an email to Jerome waited. We need to discuss a different kind of transition than the one you proposed. Outside her window, a summer storm rolled in from the harbor, lightning illuminating the city in bright flashes. Tomorrow, she'd sit across from Max at Sullivan's farm, the scent of maple syrup and possibility in the air, and take the first step on a new path. One that felt more like coming home than any corner office ever could. But tonight, she had a proposal to refine, a dream to shape, and a legacy of her own to define. After all, some choices weren't about walking away from something, but walking toward who you were meant to be. Sullivan's Maple House was quiet at 6:55 a.m., morning mist still clinging to the sugar maples. Alex sat at a corner table, her grandmother's silk scarf draped over the chair beside her. The proposal she'd worked on all night spread across the wooden surface. Mrs. Sullivan had taken one look at her face and wordlessly delivered a cup of coffee and fresh blueberry scones. "He'll be here soon," she'd said, squeezing Alex's shoulder. "That boy's never late for anything that matters." The bell above the door chimed at exactly 7 a.m. Max stood in the doorway, his medical bag still slung over his shoulder, hair slightly damp from what must have been an early morning run. Their eyes met across the room, and Alex felt her carefully prepared speech evaporate. "You came straight from New York?" He slid into the seat across from her, concern etching his features. "Red-eye flight. Couldn't sleep anyway." Alex pushed a stack of papers toward him. "I need you to look at something." Max studied the proposal's cover page, integrated rehabilitation services, a new approach to patient recovery. His eyes widened as he flipped through the pages of financial projections, facility layouts, and service descriptions. "It's a hybrid model," Alex explained, her words tumbling out, "combining physical therapy with financial counseling and support services. Help patients navigate not just their recovery, but the whole system: insurance, medical bills, workplace accommodations." I ran the numbers, and with the right investors, Alex, Max interrupted softly. "What exactly are you saying?" She took a deep breath. "I'm saying I'm not going back to Goldman Sachs. I've already emailed my resignation. I'm applying to the physical therapy program, and in the meantime, I want to build this with you." She gestured to the proposal. "If you're interested." Max was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. "What about Regina's warning about proper asset allocation? That's exactly what this is." Alex leaned forward. "Allocating our skills where they'll do the most good. Your medical expertise, my financial background. We could help people beyond just physical recovery, create something that fills a real need." "The board won't like it," Max said, but his eyes were brightening with possibility. "They're already pushing back on my community outreach proposals. So we do it independently. I have savings, connections with potential investors. Mrs. Sullivan's son Dylan is a contractor. We could renovate the old mill building by the river." The words poured out as Alex shared the vision she'd been developing. "Make it accessible, sustainable, something that serves the whole community. You've really thought this through." All night, Alex managed a small smile. Turns out New York hotel rooms are good for something. Max reached across the table, his hand covering hers. What made you decide? Watching Grandpa on those stairs yesterday? Seeing how your work changes lives? Realizing that maybe success isn't about climbing corporate ladders, but about building something meaningful. She turned her hand to intertwine their fingers. And maybe finding someone to build it with. The morning light streamed through the windows, catching the golden flecks in Max's eyes. You know this won't be easy. Starting over, going back to school, dealing with the medical establishment's resistance. Nothing worth doing ever is. Alex squeezed his hand. But I learned something from watching you with your patients. Sometimes the hardest steps are the most important ones. Mrs. Sullivan appeared with fresh coffee and a knowing smile. Should I start planning the grand opening party? Martha, Max laughed. We haven't even, please. She waved him off. I've been watching you two dance around each other for weeks. About time you both took the leap. She set down a plate of her famous cinnamon rolls. Now, tell me about this mill building renovation. My Dylan's been saying that space has potential. For the next hour, they outlined their vision. A center that would combine rehabilitation services with financial and emotional support, creating a holistic approach to recovery. Mrs. Sullivan offered suggestions about community needs, while Max's medical knowledge filled in clinical details. What about Regina? Alex asked finally. And the hospital board? Let me handle them. Max's voice was firm. It's time they understood that the Crawford legacy can evolve. My father built the medical center to serve this community. What we're planning, it honors that mission, just in a different way. Alex's phone buzzed, Richard checking in. Should I tell him the big news? Actually, Max stood, offering his hand. Why don't we tell him together? I have some ideas about converting part of the center into a specialized seniors program. Could use his input. They said goodbye to Mrs. Sullivan, who was already on the phone with Dylan discussing renovation possibilities. Outside, the morning mist had burned away, revealing a crystal-clear Vermont day. Max's hand found Alex's as they walked to his car. You know, he said, when you texted about meeting, I was afraid you were going to say goodbye. For a while there, I thought I might be. Alex stopped, turning to face him, but then I realized something. New York was where I want to prove myself. Burlington, this is where I found myself. Max cupped her face in his hands, and finally, after weeks of waiting, wondering, and wrestling with choices, kissed her. It was gentle at first, then deeper, full of promise and possibility. When they broke apart, his smile lit up his entire face. Ready to disappoint some very important people? He asked. Alex laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. Only if you're ready to redefine what success really means. As they drove toward Richard's house, Alex thought about legacies. The ones we inherit, the ones we choose, and the ones we create. Her grandmother's scarf rustled in her bag, a reminder that the bravest hearts don't follow the expected path. They follow the one that leads them home. 6 months later, the autumn sun painted Burlington's waterfront in shades of gold and crimson. Alex stood at the entrance of the renovated mill building, now transformed into the Cooper Crawford Center for Integrated Rehabilitation. The historic brick facade gleamed, its large windows reflecting the dancing waters of Lake Champlain. Ready for the grand opening? Max appeared beside her, looking sharp in a charcoal suit that managed to be both professional and approachable, much like the center itself. Almost. Alex adjusted the silk scarf at her neck, her grandmother's dancers now the center's unofficial logo. Just waiting for our guest of honor. Right on cue, Richard's car pulled up, driven by Mrs. Sullivan's son Dylan. But instead of using his wheelchair, Richard stepped out steadily, leaning only slightly on a sleek carbon fiber cane. There's my favorite granddaughter, he called out, his voice drawn and clear. Though I suppose I should say Dr. Cooper to be. How's the first semester of PT school treating you? Challenging, Alex admitted, hugging him carefully, but in all the right ways. Just like her clinical supervisor, Max added with a grin. She's already revolutionizing our patient financial counseling program. The center's lobby buzzed with excitement as early arrivals gathered for the opening ceremony. Local officials mingled with medical professionals and former patients. Alex spotted Mrs. Sullivan directing the catering staff, her maple-glazed pastries taking center stage. Maxwell, Regina Crawford's voice cut through the chatter. She stood in the doorway, impeccably dressed as always, but something in her expression had softened. The board members are impressed with the preliminary reports. Your patient outcomes data, combined with Alexandra's financial accessibility models. She paused. Your father would have been proud. Max's hand found Alex's, squeezing gently. Thank you, Mother. That means a lot. Well, Regina straightened her jacket. I suppose innovation runs in the family, even if it takes unexpected forms. She turned to Alex. I trust you'll continue to ensure proper asset allocation? Alex smiled, thinking of the center's unique approach. Physical therapy rooms designed for optimal recovery, adjoining offices where patients could meet with financial counselors, community spaces for support groups and educational workshops. We're allocating resources where they matter most, helping people rebuild their lives in every way possible. The ceremony began with Richard cutting the ribbon, his hands steady, his pride evident. As he spoke about his own recovery journey and the center's mission, Alex scanned the crowd. Her former Goldman Sachs colleagues had sent flowers but predictable regrets. Yet the room was full of people who mattered more. Patients whose lives they touched, community members who'd supported their vision, medical professionals eager to learn their integrated approach. And now, Richard concluded, I'd like to introduce our co-founders, who prove that the best investments we can make are in people's futures. As Max stepped forward to outline their innovative program, Alex felt a familiar warmth spread through her chest. This was what success really looked like. Not a corner office or impressive title, but creating something meaningful, something that changed lives. Later, during the reception, she found herself by the window overlooking the lake. The same view she'd once admired from her Manhattan office, but now filled with vibrant fall colors instead of steel and glass. Penny, for your thoughts? Max wrapped his arms around her from behind. Just thinking about choices, she leaned back against him. 6 months ago, I thought I was temporarily leaving New York to help Grandpa. I had no idea I was actually coming home. Speaking of home, Max's voice held a hint of nervousness. Mrs. Sullivan's son is renovating the old carriage house on my family's estate. Plenty of room for a home office, close to both the center and your grandfather. Alex turned in his arms, heart racing. Maxwell Crawford, are you asking me to move in with you? Actually, he reached into his pocket. I'm asking for something more permanent. The vintage ring caught the late afternoon light. Elegant, understated, perfect. My grandmother's, he explained. She was also a woman who chose her own path. Through tears, Alex saw Richard and Mrs. Sullivan watching from across the room, both beaming. Even Regina managed a genuine smile. The thing about legacies, Max continued, is that they're meant to grow, to evolve. What we're building here, the center, our life together, it's more than I ever imagined when I chose rehabilitation over hospital administration. Yes, Alex whispered, then louder. Yes to all of it. The applause that erupted suggested their private moment hadn't been so private after all. But Alex didn't care. She was too busy memorizing the joy in Max's eyes, the solid warmth of his arms, the feeling of absolute certainty in her chest. Later that evening, they gathered at Sullivan's farm for a smaller celebration, under strings of twinkling lights, surrounded by the people who'd supported their journey. Alex watched Max demonstrate a new therapy technique to an enthusiastic Richard. You know what Catherine would say about all this? Richard wheeled over to her, his cane propped against his chair. A symbol of progress, not dependence. What's that? That sometimes life's greatest blessings come disguised as challenges. He patted her hand. She sent you that stroke to lead you home, sweetheart, to where you were always meant to be. Alex touched her grandmother's scarf, now wrapped around her bouquet of autumn flowers. Above them, stars began to appear in the darkening Vermont sky, so much brighter than in Manhattan. She thought about the journey that had brought her here. A crisis that became an opportunity, a temporary return that became a new beginning, a professional relationship that blossomed into love. Max caught her eye across the garden and smiled, that same warm, genuine smile that had first hinted at the man behind the doctor. In a few months, they'd be married right here at the farm, with Mrs. Sullivan's maple-glazed cake and the mountains as their witnesses. The center would continue to grow, combining their strengths to help others find their way back to wholeness. But tonight was for celebrating the path that had led them here. The choices that had seemed so difficult at the time now felt inevitable, like steps in a dance they'd been meant to perform all along. After all, Alex realized, watching Max demonstrate proper walker technique to Mrs. Sullivan's granddaughter, sometimes the bravest thing we can do is let life lead us where we're meant to go. Even if it takes a detour through unexpected territory to bring us home.